All right. Here's another book review. This was an old one. This is old school. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I had always heard about Mark Twain, and I may or may not have read a book of his when I was in high school. It's kind of your reading list is they give you like this. Here in America, I don't know. You got to read like this stuff. And Mark Twain is an American author, and he writes about really it's what was then considered the West, which was basically the Midwest. I don't remember where this story takes place. I think this story takes place in Missouri. And it was written in the 19th century, and it's about a kid named Tom Sawyer. I think he's something like 15 years old or something, maybe younger. I think when he starts the story, he's maybe 9 or something. By the end of the story, he's maybe 15. But it like harkens back to a simpler time. Um, I remember as a kid, I'm lucky enough, I think, because I was part of the transition generation from analog to full technology smartphone. I still remember talking on a landline. Um, I still remember playing outside. Like, I still remember, we didn't have like satellite TV. We didn't have the internet. We didn't when I was a kid. The internet came in when I was around 10 years old. Is when the public started using the internet. And I just remember I used to go out and hang out with the kids in the neighborhood and fuck around with the kids in the neighborhood and, play football, mess around, go to the park, get into trouble, get dirty, get cut up, ride bikes, whatever. And that's basically, if you look at this cover, you see it's like little boys messing around. You got like somebody falling over there. It's unbelievable, but it's basically about the adolescence, the childhood and adolescence of a boy. And Tom Sawyer is like this really precocious, mischievous, kind of troublesome little kid, but he's like a leader. And in it, he's got a bunch of lessons, right? Mark Twain writes about a bunch of lessons. Like, he finds out how to get people to do other things for him. And then he's like, oh, I realize when you make something rare, other people value it more. So he convinced these kids, his aunt, because he lives with his aunt, he's an orphan, his aunt raises him and his half brother. But his aunt wants him to paint a fence. He doesn't really want to paint the fence because he has to paint the fence on a Saturday, and that's when all the boys go out and play and mess around. And so like he starts painting the fence, whatever. One of the boys walks by the fence as he's working and starts making fun of him. And Tom Sawyer, he basically just manipulates him into paying. He makes the fence sound like it's the coolest thing in the world to do. It's better than going out to play, and only losers don't paint fences. It's basically like the premise. And so the kid's like kind of like, oh well. Maybe I want to paint the face. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I should let you. Like, only the best people can paint the face. So he gives him this whole like ridiculous story. And when it ends up happening, he's like, well, give me your like button. So he gets the kid to pay him to paint the fence that he was supposed to paint. And that's like that's one of the first things that he ends up doing. And then he goes on and he meets this girl, and he's like, it's like a little coming of age thing with the boy and the girl. He kisses her for the first time and asks her to marry him, and then she finds out he asked another girl to marry her before. It's just so stupid, but it's like this cool story about just this kid and the adventures of this kid, and what I gathered from it, the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, is like there's an innocence to childhood. And a fun to childhood. And, when you're out and all you have is your imagination and you have your friends, that's priceless. Those memories. And I really was living vicariously through Tom Sawyer, and it reminded me of when I was a kid and playing with all my guy friends, and well, all my friends were boys, but playing with all my friends, and when you're 9 or 10 years old, like you nothing matters. The reason I'm reading this now in my mid 30s, because I think there's a part of me that's trying to find my childhood again. Right, like that part of being a kid that made you creative, that made you exploratory, that made you curious, that made you happy with the smallest things. Um, because I think as adult, as a man, I think we can get bogged down with the burdens of life, with the things that we did, mistakes we made, the chances we didn't take, the opportunities we lost. And sometimes I think it's important to remember, like life's meant to be lived. Life's meant to be fun. It's meant to be a blast. It's an adventure. And these kids were living in Missouri. And it's funny because, even in their little town, like, basically nobody leaves the town. And they talk about it like there was this guy, I don't think he was a preacher or something, or a doctor. He, came from, 30 miles away. And he was like, oh, he's been to such and such town, right? It's like, you would have thought this guy went to Japan. But he's just, 30 miles away. But even in that little town, these kids find adventure. One part of the story, Tom runs away with his two buddies. And they cross the Mississippi. And they hang out in, this wooded area on this island. And it's just... these kids didn't take anything for granted in the story. And I think kids are like that in general, before I guess adults and school and whatever gets a hold of them. But yeah, I think that especially as men, it's really important that we take time to remember what it was like to, be a kid, fuck around and have a good time. This life is short, man. We don't know when our time runs out. And I think that I want to start doing reviews for films too, like masculine films. Because The Sandlot comes to mind. That's a movie that I saw as a kid, and I was like, I watched that movie. I can't get enough of that movie. But anyway, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He's got a sequel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, who is actually his best friend in the book. And I'm going to read that, and I'll do a review on that one. But it's a classic. It costs next to nothing to buy. Probably get it at like $1 bookstore or something, or just order it on Amazon, or get it from the library. There's a thing called the library where you don't have to actually pay for books. You already paid because you pay taxes. Check it out. I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. So, there's another book review of Heroes and Men, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to subscribe, share. If you enjoyed the content, comment. I'd love to hear from you. Ways I can improve it. I'm working on some things right now. I know it's kind of like lo-fi right now, but we're getting there. So, anyway, peace, and I'll see you next time.